Single dad was exhausted. He had not slept in days. Work, bills, taking care of his little girl alone. Everything was hard. So when he finally sat down in seat 8A, he closed his eyes immediately. The plane engines hummed softly. Peace at last. But then the captain's voice shattered the silence. And his secret was about to explode. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Imagine you are on a plane, 35,000 feet above the ocean. The engines hum softly. Children whisper. Laptops click. Everything feels normal. Safe. Boring, even. And then suddenly, the captain's voice cuts through the calm cabin like a knife. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is any combat pilot on board, please identify yourself immediately. Every passenger freezes. Forks stop halfway to mouths. Eyes go wide. Hearts pound. And in seat 8A, a man in a faded jacket stirs from sleep. His 5-year-old daughter is curled against his chest, her tiny fingers clutching a stuffed rabbit. He does not move. He does not want anyone to notice him. Because the last thing he wants is to reveal who he really is. This is not just a flight. This is not just turbulence. This is the kind of moment that changes lives. And if you are watching this, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will grip you from takeoff to landing. You will not believe the twists coming your way. His name was Jacob Cross, though nobody on the plane knew that name. To the world around him, he was just another tired father traveling alone with a sleepy child. Dark circles under his eyes. Worn sneakers. A diaper bag slung over one shoulder. He looked like a man who had not slept properly in months. And that was true. But not for the reasons people might think. Jacob had chosen this flight carefully. New York to London. Long enough to let his daughter sleep. Quiet enough to stay invisible. He wanted nothing more than to fade into the background, to be just another passenger with no story, no past, no secrets. But fate has a way of finding the people who run from it. Somewhere over the Atlantic, thousands of miles from land, fate found Jacob Cross again. It started with that announcement. The captain's voice was calm, but Jacob could hear the tension underneath. The kind of voice that tries to hide panic behind training. We are experiencing a situation that requires immediate assistance. If there is any combat pilot on board, please make yourself known to the crew. Whispers rippled through the cabin. Passengers exchanged nervous glances. A few people laughed uncomfortably, thinking maybe it was a strange joke. But the flight attendants were not laughing. Their faces were tight. Their movements were quick. And Jacob saw all of this even though his eyes were closed. His daughter, Emma, shifted against his chest. Her small hand tightened around the rabbit. She was still asleep, thank God. He did not want her to wake up. Not now. Not for this. A flight attendant walked down the aisle, her eyes scanning every row. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read, Sarah. When she reached row 8, she paused. Her eyes lingered on Jacob for just a moment too long. "Sir," she whispered, leaning close. "Did you hear the announcement?" Jacob opened his eyes slowly. He looked tired. Confused. Like a man who had just been woken from deep sleep. "Announcement," he mumbled. "The captain is looking for a combat pilot. Do you know if anyone on this flight might be one?" Jacob's heart hammered in his chest, but his face stayed calm. "Sorry," he said quietly. "I am just trying to keep my daughter asleep. I do not know anyone here." Sarah nodded and moved on, but Jacob could feel her uncertainty. She glanced back at him once before continuing down the aisle. And in that moment, Jacob knew she suspected something. Maybe it was the way he held himself. The way his eyes had scanned the cabin in one quick, trained sweep. The way he stayed too still, too controlled. He looked down at Emma. Her face was peaceful. Innocent. She had no idea that her father had once flown fighter jets into war zones. That he had dodged missiles and made split-second decisions that saved lives. That he had been one of the best combat pilots in the Air Force before everything fell apart. Before his wife died. Before he became a single father trying to build a normal life for a little girl who had already lost too much. Jacob closed his eyes again and tried to disappear. But his mind was racing. Why was the captain asking for a combat pilot? What kind of situation required that specific skill? His instincts screamed at him that something was very wrong. And then the plane shook. Not turbulence. This was different. A hard jolt that made overhead bins rattle and passengers gasp. Emma's eyes flew open. She looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Daddy?" "It is okay, sweetheart," Jacob whispered, pulling her close. "Just a little bump. Go back to sleep." But even as he said it, he knew it was not okay. He could feel it in the way the plane moved. Something was off. The engine sounded wrong. And when he glanced out the window, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Another aircraft. Flying close. Too close. And it was not a commercial plane. Jacob's training kicked in instantly. He recognized the silhouette. Military grade. Fast. Maneuverable. And it was pacing them, matching their speed, staying just off their wing. This was not normal air traffic. This was deliberate. The cabin lights flickered. More gasps. A baby started crying somewhere behind him. And then the captain's voice came again, this time with more urgency. "I repeat, if there is any combat pilot on board, we need you in the cockpit immediately. This is not a drill." Jacob's jaw tightened. His hand instinctively moved to Emma's head, stroking her hair. He could ignore this. He could stay hidden. Someone else would step forward. Someone else would help. But what if nobody did? What if this plane, with 300 passengers including his daughter, went down because he was too afraid to reveal himself? Sarah appeared again, moving quickly down the aisle. This time she was not asking questions. She was looking. Searching. And when she reached Jacob, she stopped. "Sir," she said, and her voice was shaking now. "Please. The captain says we have a serious problem. Both pilots are struggling. We need someone who knows how to handle military situations. Please, if you know anything, if you have any training." Jacob looked at her. Then at Emma. Then at the window where that dark aircraft still hovered like a predator. And he made a decision he knew would change everything. "I am a pilot," he said quietly. Sarah's eyes went wide. "Combat pilot?" Jacob nodded once. "Yes. Air Force. 10 years. The relief on her face was immediate. "Oh, thank God. Please, come with me. Bring your daughter. We will keep her safe." Jacob stood up, lifting Emma into his arms. She wrapped her legs around his waist and buried her face in his neck. "Daddy, what is happening?" "Everything is going to be fine, baby. Daddy just needs to help the pilots for a little while. You are going to sit with this nice lady. Okay?" But even as he said it, he was not sure it was true. As Jacob followed Sarah toward the cockpit, every eye in the cabin turned to watch him. Whispers followed. A businessman in a suit stared. A teenage boy pointed. An elderly woman clasped her hands together as if praying. And Jacob felt the weight of their hope pressing down on him like a physical thing. Sarah stopped at the front of the cabin and spoke quickly to another flight attendant, an older woman with kind eyes. "This is..." She realized she did not know his name. "Jacob. Jacob Cross." This is Jacob. He is going into the cockpit. Can you watch his daughter? The older woman nodded immediately and reached for Emma. But Emma clung tighter to Jacob. No, Daddy, do not go. Jacob's heart broke a little. He knelt down and looked into her eyes. Emma, listen to me. I need you to be very brave right now. Can you do that for me? She nodded, tears welling up. Good girl. I will be right back. I promise. Miss. He looked at the flight attendant. Linda. Miss Linda is going to take care of you. She will give you juice and cookies and you can watch a movie. Okay. Emma hesitated, then slowly released her grip. Linda took her hand gently and led her to a jump seat near the galley. Emma clutched her rabbit and watched Jacob with big, scared eyes. Jacob stood and turned to Sarah. Let us go. Sarah swiped a keycard and the cockpit door unlocked with a heavy click. When it swung open, Jacob stepped into a scene of controlled chaos. The captain was in his 50s, gray hair, deep lines around his eyes. Sweat beaded on his forehead. The first officer was younger, maybe early 30s, and he looked pale. Both of them were moving quickly, hands flying over controls, voices tight as they spoke into their headsets. Warning lights blinked across the instrument panel. Red. Yellow. Alarms beeped in irregular patterns. And on the radar screen, Jacob saw what he had feared. 2 aircraft. Not one. Both closing in from different angles. The captain turned when Jacob entered. Relief and desperation mixed on his face. You are a combat pilot? 10 years. Air Force. F-16s and F-18s. What is the situation? The captain gestured to the radar. 2 unidentified aircraft shadowing us for the last 15 minutes. They have been jamming our communications. We lost contact with air traffic control. Autopilot is failing. And. He paused, his voice dropping. One of them just transmitted a message telling us to divert to new coordinates or they will force us down. Jacob's mind raced. This was not random. This was coordinated. Professional. Did they identify themselves? No. No markings on the aircraft. No radio call signs. Nothing. Jacob moved closer to the controls, his eyes scanning the instruments with practiced speed. Everything he had learned in the military came flooding back. The muscle memory. The training. The calm that settles over you when things go wrong and there is no time for panic. Can I see the coordinates they sent? The first officer pulled up a screen. Jacob looked at the numbers and his stomach dropped. The coordinates pointed to a location over the ocean. Far from any normal flight path. Far from any airport. This was not a hijacking in the traditional sense. This was something else. Something worse. How much fuel do we have? Jacob asked. Enough to reach London if we stay on course. But if we divert? The captain shook his head. We would run out before reaching land. Jacob looked out the cockpit window. The 2 aircraft were visible now in the dim light of early evening. Sleek. Dark. Purpose-built for speed and aggression. And they were getting closer. They are trying to force our hand, Jacob said quietly. Make us choose between following orders or risking a confrontation. What do we do? The captain asked. And Jacob heard the unspoken truth in that question. You are military. You have dealt with this before. Tell us how to survive. Jacob took a breath. His daughter's face flashed in his mind. Emma sitting in that jump seat, clutching her rabbit, trusting him to come back. We do not divert, Jacob said firmly. We stay on course. But they said they will force us down. They are bluffing. If they wanted to shoot us down, they would have done it already. They want something else. They want us scared. Compliant. We do not give them that. The captain looked uncertain, but the first officer nodded slowly. He is right. If they attack a commercial airliner, it becomes an international incident. They would not risk that unless they have no choice. Unless we give them no choice, Jacob added. So we have to be smart. We stay calm. We keep flying. And we make it very clear we are civilians following standard procedures. The radio crackled. A voice came through, cold and distorted. Flight 214, you have 60 seconds to begin diversion or we will take action. The captain's hand hovered over the controls, shaking slightly. Jacob leaned forward and pressed the transmit button. When he spoke, his voice was steady. Authoritative. The voice of someone who had faced worse than this and lived to tell about it. This is Flight 214. We are a civilian aircraft on a scheduled route to London. We are experiencing technical difficulties but are managing. We request you identify yourself and state your intentions. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Then the voice came back, and this time there was an edge of anger in it. You have 40 seconds. Jacob released the button and turned to the captain. Do you still have manual control? Partial. The autopilot is fighting us, but I can override. Good. When I say, I need you to drop altitude. Fast. 2,000 feet in 10 seconds. Can you do that? The captain's eyes widened. That will terrify the passengers. Terrified passengers are better than dead ones. Can you do it? A pause. Then a nod. Yes. Jacob watched the radar. The two aircraft were positioning themselves. One ahead. One behind. A classic intercept formation. They were preparing to box the airliner in, force it to turn. 20 seconds, the voice on the radio said. Jacob's hand tightened on the back of the captain's seat. He was doing the math in his head. Speed. Distance. Reaction time. He had done this 100 times in the military. But never with 300 civilians behind him. Never with his daughter counting on him. 10 seconds. Now, Jacob said. The captain pulled back on the controls and the plane dropped. Not gently. Not smoothly. It fell like a stone. Screams erupted from the cabin. Overhead bins flew open. Bags tumbled into the aisles. But the maneuver worked. The two aircraft, expecting the airliner to stay level, suddenly found themselves out of position. One shot passed overhead. The other had to bank hard to avoid overshooting. Level out, Jacob commanded. The captain pulled up and the plane steadied. The screaming in the cabin turned to crying and panicked questions. What the hell was that? The first officer gasped. A combat maneuver, Jacob said. We just bought ourselves time. The radio exploded with angry static and then the voice came back, no longer calm. You will regret that. But Jacob was already looking at the radar again. The two aircraft were circling back, but they were farther away now. And in the distance, he saw something else. Another blip on the screen. Bigger. Moving fast. What is that? The captain asked, pointing. Jacob leaned closer. His heart jumped. That is a military escort. Someone heard our distress signal. But we have been jammed. Not completely. Enough got through. Jacob felt a wave of relief. Those two aircraft know it too. They are backing off. And he was right. On the radar, the two dark shapes were turning away, increasing distance. Within minutes, they disappeared from the screen entirely. The new blip resolved into a clear signature. A fighter jet. Friendly. And then the radio crackled with a different voice. British accent. Professional. Flight 214, this is Royal Air Force Typhoon 403. We have you on radar. Are you in distress? The captain grabbed the radio, his voice shaking with relief. Typhoon 403, this is Flight 214. We were being harassed by two unidentified aircraft. They just broke off. Copy that, Flight 214. We are escorting you to London. You are safe now. The cockpit went quiet except for the hum of the engines and the steady beep of the instruments. The captain slumped back in his seat and let out a long, shaky breath. The first officer wiped sweat from his face. Jacob stood there, his hands still steady, but his mind reeling. It was over. They were safe. You saved us, the captain said, looking up at Jacob with something like awe. If you had not been here. Jacob shook his head. You would have figured it out. You are good pilots. No. The first officer spoke up. No, we would not have. We would have panicked. Or diverted. Or frozen. You knew exactly what to do. Jacob did not respond. He just turned toward the door. I need to get back to my daughter. Wait, the captain said. What is your name? I need to report this. You will be recognized for what you did. Jacob paused at the door. No. Please. I do not want recognition. I just want to get my daughter to London and go home. Can you do that for me? The captain studied him for a long moment. Then nodded slowly. Okay. But thank you. Truly. Jacob stepped out of the cockpit and the door closed behind him. The cabin was still in chaos. Passengers were crying. Flight attendants were trying to calm people down. And in the galley, he saw Emma still sitting in the jump seat, her face streaked with tears. When she saw him, she jumped down and ran to him. Jacob scooped her up and held her tight. Daddy, I was scared. I know, baby. I know. But it is over now. We are safe. Sarah appeared beside him. Is it true? Did you really save the plane? Jacob did not answer. He just carried Emma back to seat 8A and sat down. Emma curled into his lap, her rabbit clutched between them. And as the plane continued its steady path toward London, escorted by the Royal Air Force, Jacob closed his eyes. But he did not sleep. Because even though the immediate danger was over, he knew this was not the end. Those two aircraft had not been random. They had been organized. Professional. And the fact that they had backed off so quickly when the military arrived told Jacob something important. They had not wanted to be identified. Which meant they would try again. Maybe not today. Maybe not on this flight. But somewhere. Somehow. And Jacob realized with a cold certainty that his past had finally caught up to him. Because 10 years ago, when he was still in the Air Force, he had been part of a classified mission. A mission that went wrong. A mission where he had seen things he was not supposed to see. And afterward, he had been quietly pushed out. Given an honorable discharge. Told to forget what happened. But some people never forget. And now, thousands of feet above the ocean, with his daughter sleeping in his arms, Jacob understood that he was no longer running from his past. His past was hunting him. The rest of the flight passed in tense silence. Passengers whispered among themselves. Flight attendants moved through the cabin with forced smiles. And Jacob sat very still, his mind working through scenarios and possibilities. When the plane finally touched down in London, there was scattered applause. Relief. Gratitude. People gathered their bags and shuffled toward the exit, eager to put the terrifying experience behind them. Jacob waited until the cabin was nearly empty before standing up with Emma. As he walked down the aisle, he noticed people staring at him. Some with curiosity. Some with recognition. Word had spread somehow. The man in 8A had gone into the cockpit. The man in 8A had done something. But Jacob kept his head down and kept walking. At the exit, the captain was waiting. He stepped forward and put a hand on Jacob's shoulder. "I do not know what you are running from," he said quietly. "But whatever it is, you are a good man. And a hell of a pilot." Jacob nodded once and continued down the jet bridge. Inside the terminal, everything looked normal. Travelers rushing. Announcements echoing. Coffee shops and currency exchanges. But Jacob's instincts were screaming. He scanned the crowd as he walked, looking for anything out of place. Anyone watching. And then he saw him. A man in a dark suit. Standing near a pillar. Not moving. Just watching. And when their eyes met, the man smiled. A cold, knowing smile. Jacob's blood ran cold. He gripped Emma's hand tighter and changed direction, heading for the nearest exit. He did not run. Running would draw attention. But he moved fast, weaving through the crowd. "Daddy, where are we going?" Emma asked, confused. "Just a different way, sweetheart. Come on." He glanced back. The man in the suit was following. Not rushing. Just keeping pace. And now Jacob saw there were others. 2 more men. Different positions. Coordinated. This was not random. This was planned. Jacob's mind raced. He could not let them take him. If they got him, they got Emma. And he would die before he let that happen. He spotted a family restroom ahead. A single room. Lockable. He pulled Emma inside and locked the door. "Daddy, what is wrong?" Jacob knelt down and looked into her eyes. "Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. Do you remember the game we practiced? The quiet game?" Emma nodded, her eyes wide. "Good. We are going to play that now. No matter what happens, you stay quiet. Okay? Okay." Jacob pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had not called in 5 years. It rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered. "Cross. Is that you?" "Reeves. I need help." There was a pause. "Where are you?" "London Heathrow. Terminal 5. I have got my daughter with me and I am being tracked." "Who?" "I do not know. But I think it is related to Cairo." Another pause. Longer this time. "Cairo was buried, Cross. It does not exist anymore." "Then why are there men following me right now?" Silence. "Reeves, I need extraction. Now. I have maybe 5 minutes before they find me. I will make a call. Give me your exact location." Jacob rattled off the terminal and section. Then he hung up and looked at Emma. She was watching him with those big, trusting eyes. And in that moment, he made a promise to himself. Whatever happened, she would be safe. There was a knock on the door. Not aggressive. Almost polite. And then a voice. The same cold voice from the plane. "Mr. Cross. We just want to talk." Jacob did not answer. "We know you are in there. We know you have your daughter. We have no interest in harming either of you. We simply need information." Jacob's hand moved instinctively to his waist, but of course there was no weapon there. He had not carried a gun in 5 years. He was a civilian now. A father. "What kind of information?" Jacob called out. "About Cairo. About what you saw." "I saw nothing. I was a pilot. I flew missions." "You saw more than that. And we need to know who else you told." Jacob's mind worked fast. They did not know. They thought he had talked. Shared the information. Which meant they were scared. And scared people made mistakes. I never told anyone, Jacob said. I signed the documents. I kept my mouth shut. I just want to live my life. Then you will not mind coming with us. Just for a conversation. And if I refuse? Then we will be forced to make this difficult. And your daughter does not need to see that. Jacob looked at Emma. She was clutching her rabbit, her eyes filled with tears, but she was staying quiet. Being brave. Just like he had asked. And then Jacob heard something. A faint sound. Running footsteps. Shouts. And then the voice on the other side of the door cursed. Gunshots. Not inside the terminal. But close. Jacob threw himself over Emma, shielding her with his body. She whimpered but did not scream. More shouts. More shots. And then silence. A different voice called through the door. British accent. Jacob Cross, this is Lieutenant Reeves, Special Air Service. Open the door. You are secure. Jacob hesitated. It could be a trick. But then he heard something that made him believe. A code phrase. One he had not heard in 5 years. A phrase only certain people would know. He unlocked the door and pulled it open. 3 men stood outside in tactical gear. The lead one, a man in his 40s with a scar across his cheek, nodded. Good to see you alive, Cross. Reeves. We have a vehicle waiting. We need to move. Now. Jacob picked up Emma and followed them out. The terminal was in chaos. Security was rushing toward the commotion. Travelers were running. And on the floor near the restroom, 3 men in dark suits lay unconscious or worse. Who were they? Jacob asked as they moved quickly toward an emergency exit. Contractors. Working for people who want Cairo to stay buried. I never talked. I never told anyone. We know. But they do not believe that. And as long as they think you might talk, you are a target. They reached a black SUV. Jacob climbed in with Emma. Reeves got in front. The vehicle sped off, weaving through airport traffic. Where are we going? Jacob asked. Safe house. We will debrief you. Figure out our next move. Emma looked up at Jacob, her face pale. Daddy, I am scared. Jacob pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. I know, baby. But these are good people. They are going to help us. Emma nodded and buried her face in his chest. Reeves glanced back from the front seat. You should have come to us sooner, Cross. When this started. I thought it was over. I thought if I stayed quiet and lived a normal life, they would forget about me. They never forget. You know that. Jacob did know. He had just hoped it would not matter. The SUV drove for 20 minutes before pulling into an underground garage beneath an unmarked building. They were led inside, through security checkpoints, and finally into a small room with a couch, a table, and a television. You will be safe here tonight, Reeves said. Tomorrow we will move you somewhere more permanent. What about my life? My job? Emma's school? Reeves's expression was sympathetic but firm. That life is over, Cross. You know that. The moment they found you, it was over. Jacob felt the weight of those words settle on him like a stone. Everything he had built. The quiet life. The normal life. Gone. Emma tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, can I watch cartoons? Jacob forced a smile. Sure, sweetheart. He turned on the television and found a children's channel. Emma settled on the couch with her rabbit, her eyes already drooping from exhaustion. Reeves gestured for Jacob to step into the hallway. Once outside, he spoke in a low voice. We need to know everything. What you saw in Cairo. What you remember. I told you. I saw an operation go wrong. Civilians caught in the crossfire. And I saw the people responsible cover it up. Who? Jacob hesitated. Then he said two names. Names of high-ranking officials. Names that would make headlines if they were ever connected to what happened in Cairo. Reeves's expression darkened. You are sure? I am sure. I saw them there. I heard the orders. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. This is bigger than we thought. You are not just a witness, Cross. You are a liability to some very powerful people. What do I do? You testify. We bring them down. And then we put you and your daughter in witness protection. Jacob's heart sank. Witness protection meant new names. New lives. Never going home. Never seeing anyone they knew again. But what choice did he have? He looked back through the doorway at Emma, asleep on the couch, her rabbit clutched in her arms. She had already lost her mother. Now she was going to lose everything else too. Okay, Jacob said quietly. I will testify. But you have to promise me she stays safe. No matter what. You have my word. Jacob nodded and walked back into the room. He sat down beside Emma and gently stroked her hair. She stirred in her sleep and mumbled something he could not quite hear. And as he sat there in that safe house, thousands of miles from home, Jacob realized that the moment he had stepped into that cockpit, his life had changed forever. He had been trying to hide. Trying to be invisible. Trying to protect his daughter from his past. But the past does not stay buried. And now, as a single father with a 5-year-old who trusted him completely, Jacob had to face the truth. He was not just a former combat pilot. He was a target. A witness. A man caught between duty and survival. Outside, the rain began to fall on the streets of London. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, unaware of the storm that was coming. And Jacob Cross, the man who had been sleeping in seat 8A, prepared himself for the fight of his life. Because some battles do not end when you leave the military. Some battles follow you home. And this one had just begun. The hearing room was cold and sterile. White walls. Fluorescent lights. Security guards at every door. Jacob sat at a table facing a panel of military officials and government investigators. Emma was in a safe location with child services. He had not seen her in 2 days. It was killing him. Mr. Cross, the lead investigator said, leaning forward. You claim you witnessed illegal operations in Cairo. Operations authorized by people in this room. Jacob looked at the faces staring back at him. Some were hostile. Some were blank. And one man in the back, a general with silver hair and cold eyes, was watching him with barely concealed rage. That was General Richard Harding. The man who had ordered the Cairo operation. The man who had covered it up. The man who had sent contractors to silence Jacob. I do not claim anything, Jacob said steadily. I am telling you what I saw. Civilian targets were hit. 17 people died. And the official report said it was enemy combatants. That was a lie. Harding stood up slowly. This is ridiculous. This man is a disgraced pilot looking for attention. He has no proof. I have recordings, Jacob said quietly. The room went silent. Jacob reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive. He placed it on the table. I wore a body camera during that mission. Standard protocol. I kept the footage. Every second of it. Harding's face went white. You destroyed those recordings, Harding said. The official report says all footage was corrupted. The official footage was corrupted, Jacob agreed. But I made a backup. And I have kept it safe for 5 years. Waiting for the right moment. The lead investigator took the flash drive with trembling hands. Why did you not come forward sooner? Jacob thought of his wife. Of Emma. Of the quiet life he had tried to build. Because I was scared. Because I had a family to protect. But now they have already come for me. So I have nothing left to lose. The investigator nodded and stood. This hearing is adjourned. We will review this evidence and reconvene. As the room cleared, Harding walked past Jacob's table. He leaned down and whispered, "You just signed your death warrant." Jacob looked up at him without flinching. "Maybe. But I signed yours first. A small house on the coast of Maine. Quiet. Isolated. Beautiful." Jacob stood on the porch watching Emma play in the yard. She was laughing. Chasing butterflies. Her rabbit tucked under one arm. They had new names now. New identities. The trial had ended with convictions. Harding and 3 others were in prison. The story had made international headlines. And Jacob and Emma had disappeared into witness protection. It was not the life he had planned. But it was a life. And Emma was safe. That was all that mattered. "Daddy, look!" Emma called, holding up a flower. Jacob smiled. "Beautiful, sweetheart." She ran to him and he picked her up, holding her close. And for the first time in years, Jacob felt something like peace. The battles were over. The war was won. And the man who had been sleeping in seat 8A could finally rest. But that evening, as he tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at him with curious eyes. "Daddy, why did we have to leave our old house?" Jacob sat on the edge of her bed and stroked her hair. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, doing the right thing means everything changes. But as long as we have each other, we have everything we need. Will we ever go back?" Jacob thought about that. About their old life. Their old names. The people they used to be. "No, baby. We cannot go back. But we can go forward. We can build something new. Something better." Emma nodded sleepily. "I like it here. The ocean is pretty." "Me too." "And Daddy?" "Yes. You were really brave on that airplane. Miss Linda told me. She said you saved everyone." Jacob's throat tightened. "I just did what I had to do." "That is what brave means," Emma whispered, her eyes closing. "Doing what you have to do even when you are scared." Jacob kissed her forehead and whispered, "When did you get so smart?" But she was already asleep, her breathing soft and steady, her rabbit clutched close. Jacob stood and walked to the window. The ocean stretched out before him, endless and dark under the night sky. And somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, was the life he had left behind. The identity he had buried. The man he used to be. But here, in this small house with his daughter sleeping peacefully, he was exactly who he needed to be. A father. A protector. A survivor. And that was enough.